If you would like to get your song reviewed, dear listener, there's the filthy capitalist option. As Sori says, $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You don't have to be a part of the alliance. You don't have to be part of the group.
Wait a minute.
And the biggest thing is you don't have to wait. You hop, skip, and jump right in front of everybody. $125 gets you there. You do that 3 times, and you get mashed down to the $75 rate for perpetuity.
Yes!
Also, there is a band review option. So if you've got a band and you're trying to get your band some exposure, hit me up at vinsori@gmail.com, and I'll show you the details about how to pull that off.
You can also jump on Patreon, and there is a option on the tiers to be able to get your band reviewed. Yep. Obviously, we can't lie to you, so we can't guarantee a positive review. Get what you get.
It's just rubbish.
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 That's British for garbage.
My favorite is a community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon. You get to join an alliance. The alliance joins their points together, and that helps determine what songs that we do.
The alliances hang out on Discord.
Message me on Patreon to get the link.
And they do all kinds of other cool things. They do Minecraft, Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. It's really a community within the community. Anybody can go on the village, facebook.com/Vin and Sori. There's 160,000+ people on the channel. What's cool about the Discord is that it offers a real opportunity for community connection, friendship, that type of thing.
And it's on Discord, so if you're not a Facebook person, it's for you.
You start off at $1.
Right.
Plus you get exclusives. Sori and I are working on a song. So the first 15 seconds of that was on Patreon. Also, at $15 tier and above, when we actually debut the video, they're going to be there live with us. There you are, dear listener.
Buy our merch.
Buy our merch indeed.
And the child shall lead them.
To buy our merch. All right, Chicago Dialogue 1 and 2. This is your first time reacting to this band. Well, first time reacting to a full song of theirs. You previously heard a clip of their song, Does Anyone Really Know What Time It Is? When Adam Sandler's character, Little Nicky, revealed a satanic message if the song is played backwards. Obviously, this was a scene from the movie Little Nicky and completely fictional. As far as my... Oh, yeah, you remember that?
Yeah.
And as far as my knowledge goes, at least... So if you start having satanic thoughts, please go see your local exorcist. They were a massively popular band that was signed to Columbia Records during the 60s. One of the first ever Clive Davis took the reins. They opened for Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix in the 60s and became one of the leading pop rock bands. This single is off their album Chicago V. It was released in October of 1972, right before the election, which I imagine the song was trying to fit the mood of, even though the song itself was recorded in 1971. If you don't like these electioneering songs, then this is the last, as our next 2 songs were released after the election that happened on November 7th, 1972, when Nixon won a second term. The song reached 24 on the U.S. charts.
All right, guys, here we go.
Chicago Dialogue 1 and 2.
Here we go. You know what, Liam? He put out a $5 super chat. He put like 2 $5 super chats. Isn't that enough to put him in an alliance?
Yeah. That, I mean, it's $1 a month to do that, so that'd give him some like 10 months.
That's like a year, basically.
Yeah.
Basically, since a year.
Just send us an email.
Okay.
And we'll get
send me an email. We'll get you locked up into an alliance, big homie. Okay. By the way, Johnny wants to know how y'all have been. All right, here's the song, guys. The name of the band is Chicago. The name of the song is Dialogue Part 1 and 2. They're both on this. That's the song.
Yeah, he's saying it's a full song, so
it's one song.
Maybe there's like
it's
two dialogues in the song. We'll see. We'll see when we get rolling.
Welcome, my son, to the 70s.
Yes.
All right, let's do this shit.
I like that.
You do?
Yeah. Makes you feel like, okay, it's about to get real fun.
What a bass.
Optimistic about the way that things are going. No, I never ever seem to be
There you have it. We can make it happen.
Oh, okay. No.
This is a song by Chicago.
That's
Dialogue 1 and 2.
Okay, so it's two people talking to each other back and forth.
It was
This is
a
a
dialogue.
very interesting song.
Yeah.
What
It kind of reminded me of Us at times, you know, because there's a lot of political stuff that I would just like stay away from or stay out of.
Mhm.
I'm more political now because we're together, but I definitely would, I guess. So like for me, I don't like knowing about, I know that there's categories of atrocities in the world, like you got war and treatment of women, treatment of children, you know, there's like lots of different categories of issues, you know, that we have in our world. But like if I'm unable to like do something directly to help that problem, then I don't need 10,000 layers of levels of how evil or horrible something is, because it's only going to, like, there's a certain helpless feeling and I guess a certain level of depression that comes from seeing something as a problem when you're powerless to do anything to change it. Like an active change. If I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pray about this, then that's different. Then I'll look at, I'm okay to look into it if I'm like, I'm gonna actively pray about it. But if I don't have the intention of doing anything about it, then knowing about all that stuff it's really depressing. I think if you know about everything, it's too much that's going on.
Well, yeah, they tried to put a positive spin at the end of it. You know, we can make it happen. But the first,
but it's funny to see
half of the song was very fascinating.
The conversation that they were having, because one of them is like, "Hey, what about this?" and then the other one is saying, like, one of them is
fine.
They understand what's going on in the world, and the other person is like, you know.
Yeah.
Really just living their life in their way and not like becoming a collective where the other person is. And I don't know.
You know, don't you worry about what's going down.
There's a balance.
I try to mind my business as no business at all. When it's time to function as a feeling human being, will your Bachelor of Arts help you get by? I hope to study further a few more years.
He doesn't even answer the question.
Right. Because we all know the answer to that question, man. Like, your Bachelor of Arts is not... But see, that's stuff I am sure he was told. I don't know whether this guy got a Bachelor of Arts himself, but obviously he's pursuing an art form as his career. And if you're pursuing an art form as your career, good luck. Mm-hmm. It's just difficult to do. You know, it's tough because I hear young people talk about, oh, I'm going to be a YouTuber. It's like...
Yeah.
Like, people have no idea how difficult it is to be it's extremely difficult. Well,
Especially if you're doing it by yourself, because we've done the whole thing together, so it splits the work in half. Like the stream length doesn't split in half. Matter of fact, I believe that the streams are longer because I have a partner. We all know how short these would be if it was just me. I'd be like, that's good. I give it a 5 or I give it a 10. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, I'm gonna load up and I'm just gonna listen to a song and give it a quick rating. But then I'm like, I can't do it without Vinny. But yeah, YouTubing is extremely, it can be extremely difficult. I think it is difficult. A lot of people take mental health breaks and stuff because it can really, really, really take a toll if you don't have it in the right perspective.
Yeah, it is an art form. There's definitely a lot of art that goes into doing this shit. But it's tough because there are people that put in just as much as work as we do, and
Who?
I mean, have channel. I mean,
who was streaming every single day at 4:00 in the morning?
Yeah, we were doing that.
We'd only been married for like a couple months. I was like crying one time, like not crying, but I was like very emotional.
No, you were. You cried before.
I did, but not on stream. I did.
Yeah. Yeah, but what's fascinating about this discussion is that one of them is like, what we would consider a conscious person or awake or woke or knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's so funny to me, like, these groups are fighting each other, like, you're woke, blah, 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 and like, woke is this bad word. But it's like, everybody has this concept. There's this concept that it's on the right and the left, that society is sleeping, or that there is some truth or awareness that we don't have that they have. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the whole, I know in the black community, we used to call it the conscious community, and that's where you got woke. That's where the term woke originally came from. Okay. Is that these brothers were conscious. So you have, Talib Kweli, there's an entire genre. It's called conscious rap and all that. And it was about, these were dudes, everybody, you had one level where Jay-Z was...
is that where he gets King Kong consciousness from?
Correct. Yeah, that's because he came out of that community.
Yeah, okay.
And so what that community, well, particularly what it was about for our context was, you have a guy like Jay-Z, massively talented, brilliant rapper, but he's rapping about selling drugs, the typical. What a conscious rapper would do is he would say, the CIA brought the drugs into it. And then he would talk about the prison industrial complex. So, saw the Netflix, thing about the 13th Amendment, about how like slavery is still legal if you're incarcerated. Like, so they were rapping about that shit back then. Look at the 13th Amendment, blah, 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 blah. There's one guy that talked about like a law library and like what, like literally rapping about how to get off of crimes and things like that nature. So it's like, so there's this idea that there is a truth that I'm aware of that you're not. Right? And I'm not saying it in a sense of like they're putting themselves over everybody. I'm just telling you where the concept of quote woke came from. And my point is, I was listening to Glenn Beck a couple days ago, and he says, "Are you awake, or are you sleeping at the wheel?" He says, "Notice I didn't say are you woke. I said are you awake." So again, it's this, now this guy. This is a right wing guy, right? And he wants to make sure that he's saying, I'm not like those people saying woke. I see. But what he's saying is, I am seeing something that's going on in the country that our average American does not. I have some gnosis that the average American does not. And so that's kind of the undercurrent of this kind of dialogue between these two guys. Is one guy saying like, dude, what's going on? There's a war's going on and all the rest of it. And the other guy's like, man, just chill out, bro. Like, just relax, man. Just relax. I don't trouble anybody. Nobody troubles me. Yeah, the war, that's terrible. But hopefully the president will figure it out. That's above my pay grade, man. And the other guy's like, well, aren't you this and this and this and this? So you have a guy that's conscious and then a guy that's kind of like asleep at the wheel. And then the second half of the song is like this big optimistic, like, we're going to figure it out, blah, blah, blah. And to me, I'm like, there's nothing in the song that tells me that got me there. Yeah. Like lyrically. It's like, yeah. How do you explain that second half of the song? Because it seems very optimistic and things like that. But I'm like, see, we can make it happen. We can change the world. I'm like, these two people cannot change the world. Because what are you talking about? One of them is fine the way things are. One of them is comfortable. One of them is not gonna, upset the apple cart. And the other guy is conscious and he's upset
Oh
about
my
the war.
God.
He's upset about this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, in the second half on the song, it's like, oh, we're gonna change the world. No, you two are not gonna change the world together.
All right, I see. Because he says, Terry says, "Thank you for the talk. You know, you really eased my mind. I was troubled by the shapes of things to come." And Peter says, "Well, if you had had my outlook, your feelings would be numb. You'd always think that everything was fine."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Well, that's weird," because I didn't understand why Terry was saying that he felt better, because it didn't make sense to me. But I see what you're saying. They're being ironic, because this is not, these two people are not going to work together. We can make it happen. We can change the world. You're right. They're not with those two attitudes about it.
And again, I don't believe either one of them are bad, because I believe that both reactions are defense mechanisms to government corruption, and corruption at levels where you just give up. I think there's a lot of people that are just giving up because the corruption is just so crazy that people are like, man, we're going to have a war every generation. We're going to have a recession every 5 years. It's just, that's been the pattern. It's always going to happen. That's the way it's going to be. And then you got another guy that's like, nah, I don't accept that. But it's really fascinating. Like, the other thing about this is a lot of us don't realize that we have blind spots, which is obviously the nature of having a blind spot. Like, for example, this dude just gets murdered by police on camera again. He's getting beat to death. Horrible. Like, I didn't watch the video. I'm never going to watch the video. I'm not covering it on Middle America, blah, blah, blah. But there's a comments thread on Middle America, and somebody said something to the effect of like, yeah, I hope we start seeing some rooftop Koreans. Well, rooftop Koreans, it was these Koreans during the LA riots. And when the LA riots were happening, they posted up on their rooftop, and they were shooting at folks. They were defending their property because all the riots were destroying the country, right? And so it was just a very fascinating, like, exercise that I'm watching this dialogue happen, because it was like, when I see a situation like that with the police and a young black man, my thought goes to my sons. It doesn't go to me.
100%. Yeah.
It goes to my sons. You see what I'm saying? And as a father, I'm like,
that's exactly what I was thinking too.
Somebody hemmed up my kid like that. I wasn't there to defend them, blah, 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 blah. And you go through the motions, and then I'm thinking about, like, these people are probably not going to get indicted, blah, 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 blah. And and then I start going through Rodney King, Tamir Rice, Amadou Diallo, and, you just have these names, and those are, this guy is like, oh God, here we go, another riot. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. The first thing this dude is thinking about is property, because he doesn't have sons that he thinks is ever going to be in that situation. So it doesn't, the first thing, the only situation where he could relate to this national moment is somebody destroying his property. Jeez. Right? But it doesn't make him a bad person. I don't like him, but it doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. It just makes him a human being. Simultaneous to that, I'm listening to stuff about Social Security. And you got these Republicans, again, I'm not saying anything about Republicans or Democrats. I'm just saying, you got these people that are talking about, let's cut Social Security, which Biden said, by the way, too, on a multitude of occasions, even though he denied it when he was debating Bernie. Talking about cutting Social Security. I don't care about that. I heard that. It went in the ear and out the other. You've heard me talk about Medicare for All. I've never talked about Social Security, protecting Social Security. That's a big fucking deal. Social Security has, like, regardless of how many right-wingers want to say that they're against socialism, Social Security has a 95% satisfaction rate in the country. Yeah. And so it's like, but I don't care, because the way that I'm looking at my life, if things go the way they're going to go, like, Social Security is going to be completely irrelevant for me, for you, for and my for sons, people, and for our entire, whatever, because we're aiming at generational wealth, right? So I don't care about Social Security, because my mindset is, I'm going to make fucking sure all my folks are good.
Yeah, and we're not even talking about ourselves. We're also talking about the people that we employ.
Oh, yeah. But my point is, there's a lot of people that are depending on that, though.
Yeah, there are.
So I have, like, this
calloused...
about
that since I was a child.
I have this calloused, like, oh, I don't care about Social Security. Just like that guy has this calloused, the first thing he thinks about is property, right? When this black dude gets killed, he's not thinking about it because he has no interest, he has no blood in the game. I have no blood in the game relative to Social Security, but there's millions of people who are terrified, looking down a future. And the other thing that's particularly galling about that is they put in their checks got docked every single pay period for this social contract that they were guaranteed supposedly, and now we're telling them, like our generation, it's like, and so, it's. But at
some point, there's going to be a cutoff, and there's some generation is going to get, like, some people group that's going to happen to.
Well, what it's going to do is it's good for employers, right? Because now you're going to retire a lot later, so that's more working people. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, but to like live your whole life knowing you have a certain age for retirement and then getting to that point. That's so discouraging.
That's what I'm saying. Like I have a very, this is a self-centered attitude. The reason I cared so much about Medicare for all was because the guy died of diabetes, and I grew up with a stepfather that had diabetes. So once again, I had skin in the game.
But isn't that how all of us are? Like,
that's what I'm saying with that guy.
It's hard to relate to something you can't relate to.
Right. So that's some of what's going on in this song is where, like, the problems that this dude is bringing up, the other guy's like, yeah, man, because they're presumably not hitting him. They're not messing with him. He's basically saying, like, I'm just trying to keep my head down.
And this is basically the conversation of the country.
Right.
Some people are in it. Some people,
Right.
The world, I guess.
But what you're seeing is a conscious person and an unconscious person, right? And a lot of people, but yet, no, I agree with you when you say it's human nature. That's what I'm saying. Like the dude worrying about property initially over the person's life, he can't relate to it because there's no overarching meta narrative. There's no string of videos of people that look like his child being mercilessly murdered on camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, these people were going crazy over Ashley Babbitt, for God's sake. I got one of them as a friend of mine, and he's like, justice for Ashley Babbitt. I'm like, she got it. But like, so that's just human nature. But when you combine that into politics, it becomes, it becomes difficult. And that's why people say, like, don't talk about religion and politics, because both of those issues are issues that go to the depth of who you are as a person. And that's why you're not supposed to talk about it at a dinner table, because all of us know that it is impossible not to be political. You are political. Period. You are. So, you have to understand that. And once you understand that, it kind of gives you context for why people are the way that they are, why they talk the way they are, why people are so cold-blooded. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, Medicare for all hit me because I had a direct correlation with diabetes and things like that, and me saying, this is fucking bullshit that the 28 years old kid could die. When I grew up, my stepdad, in his 50s, 60s, he's in his 80s now, and he was fine. He made it fine. There were about 2 or 3 years, but for the most part, he was fine. And I'm like, really? Money is the difference for this kid's life before his life even started? But that's because, again, I have a correlation there. You see what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's very fascinating, and I don't know, and what's crazy is that social media has the capability to give people that you normally would not associate with a platform where you can actually hear what they have to say. But instead, what we've done with social media is, we have, instead of saying, hey, this is a chance to hear what a Palestinian has to say about their experience. This is a chance to hear what an Israeli soldier has to say about his experience. Let me look up a Palestinian citizen if I'm on the Israeli side, or let me look up an IDF soldier if I'm on the Palestinian side, and let me follow them on Facebook and Twitter and see what they say. What do? Well, if you're pro-Palestinian, all you're going to do is conglomerate with Palestinians, and you're going to hate the fuck out of it. So what it does is it compounds the hate, and it compounds the ignorance, and it compounds... That's true. It also compounds the likelihood that you're going to misinterpret the other person in a negative fashion. Simultaneously, if you're pro-Israel, same thing. And so it's got the capacity to get us all together,
Mhm.
but what it's done is it's driven us further apart. And some of that has to do with Zuckerberg's philosophy. It's clear that Zuckerberg's philosophy prior to that, that Senate hearing was division creates attention because you're obsessed about winning the comment section. And so the more division that gets created on these platforms, the more money you're going to make because the more people are going to be on it. And then the more you can charge people for commercials. And that's what it all comes down to. Brilliant mindset. But it's like, I feel like it could have worked the other way too, though.
Yeah.
It could, you could have made togetherness, Facebook actually, they hit me up and said, hey, we want you to take this, blah, 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 brief survey, yada, yada, yada. It was not a brief survey, but one of the things I said was like during COVID, instead of doing, they didn't go as far as Twitter did, but why didn't you bring up the credentialed, the Barrington Declaration is like literally hundreds of doctors from all over the world. So, the socially orthodox people on the vaccine side were trying to make it sound like there was like one or two doctors that were raising some red flags or saying we're approaching this, and that's not true. The Great Barrington Declaration had literally thousands and thousands of doctors from literally all over the world that were saying something different. So I said to Facebook, why couldn't you get 10 people, 5 from this side, 5 from this side, and then have a debate for Monday through Friday, debating all the issues about COVID, and put it on Facebook. Have everybody meet, have everybody masked up on Zoom, blah, blah. You can do a Facebook Zoom partner, whatever you want to call it, right? Because Facebook has their own video and messaging services. You could have promoted that, and then you could have had an actual debate where everybody would have flocked to Facebook to watch that debate.
For sure.
Everybody would have. And like, as Facebook, you don't have to take a side.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a side, but you don't have to take a side. You could have done that, and it would have brought the country together.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, they did what they did, and then we created this term called the unvaxxed so that we could everybody. That's what I'm saying. It's like we have the opportunity to come together, but we're so used to division and tribalism that, our instinct is, I'm not even going to blame capitalism for it, because people are blaming capitalism for, Zuckerberg using division as a means, but if you actively worked at using unity as a means, you could have done the same thing on Facebook. You really could have, but we didn't go there. So it's just really, really interesting. So yeah, and I know, like, we only hear what we want to hear. I think that's true to a degree, but I also think that if Facebook would have done that and Zuckerberg would have hosted that at Facebook, whatever, and there would have been a 5-day debate about that where the guys really got into the weeds.
Yeah, well, I think that
people would have liked it.
We all only hear what we want to hear, I think is true, but I do think that when there's a debate happening, when you're not part of the debate, it's easy to be like, yo, that person's lying though, I think.
100%.
Because you don't have any stake in the game. 100%. Your emotions are not in it because you're not the one that's going to be made. Like, if people are wrong, instead of looking at as like, oh, great, I was wrong, so now I can readjust and I can get closer to what the truth is. Instead, people's ego is wrapped up too much in their belief system. So then if you're wrong, then it's like, well, I can't be wrong. So then I got to keep arguing. It's like I see it all the time. People be arguing the dumbest things. Especially when they're arguing with Vin, like people's ego gets right into it, and then it's like, come on, you're saying some really dumb stuff right now, like stuff that doesn't even make any sense.
But I think science, the whole endeavor of science is to say it's a living document in that there's the assumption, like we've talked about this, like first it was Newtonian physics, that was the orthodoxy. Like people don't realize this. We're on the other side, like Einstein is a genius, blah, blah, blah. People were not saying Einstein was a genius back in the day. Mm-hmm. I just saw a book. It was about this thick, and it was 100 scientists that had written a book together and said why Einstein is wrong. And they were wrong. And nobody knows who those people are anymore. So we went and a lot of it was because he was violating Newtonian orthodoxy. So it's like, okay, so now we're in the Einsteinian world, and now guys like Hoffman and Kashup or whatever, now they're violating the Einsteinian orthodoxy, so now people are starting to say they're crazy. What do you mean the moon isn't there when you don't look at it? It's not! It's not, right? But like that sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But the shit that Einstein was saying about relativity, in contradistinction to the Newtonian understanding of the world, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that now, Newton had to come up with his own kind of math to now we've got the amplituhedron, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
So it's my point in saying that is to say, even though, yes, ego gets involved, at least the scientists could have said, look, this is new and we're both looking at this together. So if we take a position, this is basically a spitball. Like, you don't have to marry your ego to that. Here's why I think we should do lockdowns and mask mandates and vax mandates, and here's why I don't think we should do X, Y, and Z, and go at it. You know what I'm saying? And go at it and kind of do the scientific work in front of the people.
Yeah.
And give the people some credit
Yeah,
and
that's
say,
why I feel like there's something else behind it.
Maybe we don't know all the minutia of what you guys are saying, but like give the common American some credit and say they're gonna get the overarching message. And I think for the most part, most Americans are if you've read the Barrington Declaration, that what's funny is I was going crazy on this COVID shit. Everybody knew I went off on poor whatever, and then somebody emailed me and said, "Hey, I really think," he's like, "I hear you, blah blah blah. I was really emotional because I was supposed to see my dad. Didn't see my dad because of the COVID situation, blah blah blah, because he lives in Florida. So he was very worried about vaccine status because he's in his 70s, whatever." And I was going off, and somebody sent me an email and they said, "I hear you. I want you to check this out, though. This is from, and he gave it was Bill Gates' personal doctor or whatever. And no matter how you feel about Bill Gates, he would not have the man around if he was incompetent, right? So he's like, if you just listen to this, whatever. And I said, I'll listen to it. I'm like, because I was telling people, like, I don't want to see something from, like, iknowthetruth.com or whatever, your buddy in his basement or whatever.
Right, exactly.
And this guy proceeded, it was a pretty long talk. This guy proceeded to basically lay out the case. Like, the geriatrics, keep them at home, have the delivery service, give them all stipends for, DoorDash or whatever. Mm-hmm. Leave young, generally healthy people, leave them to natural immunity. Mm-hmm. Definitely do not do it with children. Like, there were like 5 or 6 steps that they had. Mm-hmm. And this guy was basically saying what the Barrington Declaration was saying, but he was saying it before. And he was like, look, guys, I'm not and the guy wasn't an anti-vaxxer either. Because he said, I'm fully, my kids are vaccinated, but he was talking about this particular vaccine. Mm-hmm. He said, this is a bad strategy. And he said, it's actually going to create more variants. Right. And sure enough, there are more variants. Now, I'm not educated enough to know that he was like 100% prophetic. My point is, get that guy on there. He's credentialed. He was working with Bill Gates, for God's sake. Yeah. Get him on there and have him debate those other people and let us see. And look, I'm not very,
they don't want us to see though.
I barely graduated high school, but I got the general gist of what that guy was saying, and it changed my mind. Mm-hmm. People are like, oh, you can't change his mind. Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm. You just gotta have facts. That's all. Mm-hmm. And so, like, why couldn't we all have seen those debates? That's my thing is.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, I don't understand why. You're right. Like, why wasn't that the instinct? Why was the instinct just to crush people? And you know what I'm saying? I don't, crush all dissent and this is the orthodoxy and we're going to burn you at the stake if you, whatever. It was a very, very interesting song. Very interesting song. Very applicable. It was a 8.8 for me.
8.7 for me.
There you are, dear listener.
Coming back with some Carly Simon, You're So Vain.
You're
just saying what was next.
Okay. There's Carly Simon. That name sounds familiar. You're So Vain is the next song.
Sounds familiar to me.
There we are. Vin out.
Sori out.
Gone.